putting the human back on the robot. And this, for me, is a little bit of a retrospective, and I hope it's an entertaining retrospective. It is a retrospective on my career in information security, and if I could give it another title, it'd be Things I'd Love to Have Told My Younger Self. I'm a little bit unusual in information security terms in that I've been in InfoSec a while. That's not unusual in this room. But I've been in information security at the same company for quite some time, doing roughly the same role for quite some time. I mean, I've been in roughly the same role for about 15 years. Does that mean I say I've been doing exactly the same job every day? Absolutely not. I've gone through the change from the IT security to the InfoSec to now doing an awful lot more of the more customer-facing. But I've been through that, and I want to give you a little bit of the examples or a little bit of the lessons that I learned as I went through. So when I finish today, I want us to think about what is the security officer, what is the chief information security officer, and what is it that we need to be, and who do we need to be? Because it's very interesting that this role and this need for companies has changed so dramatically over the years. And if I think about when I first started in information security, in reality, what were we? Well, when I first started, which would have been around the 2000 mark in a slightly different company, I'd say we were a protection racket. We were continually telling people, hey, you don't want to do that, bad things will happen. Because we were totally disempowered in around 2000. So really we were a protection racket. And some people today still are going around trying to act like a protection racket in information security. And I don't see a lot of people going in trying to be this value-adding contributor to the business. But this is the evolutionary journey that I believe that all of us need to go on, and we need to avoid this stereotype, which is being a bunch of geeks with a James Bond fantasy. Now, I will be honest here. I do slip down this path on occasion. It's nice, it's fun. There's nothing better than giving a presentation to your board, hopefully not scaring them too much, talking about the latest Russian attack or the latest Chinese attack or whatever else it is that you've read about on Twitter, and you're parroting back to them and hoping they don't read the same people that you read. Sorry, did I say that out loud? We just got to be very, really careful about the different stereotypes. And in reality, what do we want to be at the end of our career? If you think about Nobel, Alfred Nobel. Alfred Nobel was the inventor of dynamite. He also invented caused the Nobel Peace Prize to be created. But the only reason why he's better known for the Nobel Peace Prize rather than dynamite is because his obituary was accidentally printed before he died. So he read his obituary and went, wow, that's really bad. I don't want to be thought of as that. So I will suddenly come up with the Nobel Peace Prize. And I wonder that as a head of information security, as someone who actually has responsibility for information security in the company, if you were to read your obituary, I mean your corporate obituary, not your actual obituary, I mean your corporate obituary, what did you achieve in your company before you left? Would you be happy, shocked, surprised, or wanting to make a change? And that, for me, was one of the things where I thought, you know what? That will not be my obituary. Let's just jump in very quickly, though, and talk a little bit about how information security has evolved during my lifetime. Now, I haven't been on this earth as long as some people have been in reality, so I apologize for that. But my earliest remembered memory would be around like the early 80s. Yes, despite these good looks, I do remember the early 80s. I know some of you are thinking, but you must have been born in the 90s. You must be a millennial. I know. It's just maybe I'm born with it. But no, earliest 80s were some of the times when I remember him. And I kind of was sitting down and I was having a conversation with someone and I started just drawing this randomly on a piece of paper. Now, this is an example diagram, which means that there will be mistakes in it. But I kind of put these the ages into these 4 ages, where you've got digital graffiti, credit card stealing, money via ransomware, and now this new thing of data destruction, data denial. And it kind of changed over time. We went from the good old days of the digital graffiti into credit card information. You got people like Alberto Gonzalez, people like that, stealing the credit cards, being quite successful at it. And then suddenly, some things happened that changed this, that enabled it. And these things, not one of them enabled this change to occur, but these 3 things and many other things enabled a complete change to cybercrime to occur. So you had Tor, the onion router, launched about 2007, 2008-ish. You had 3D Secure, MasterCard Secure Code, whatever Amex's one is called, etc., 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 all coming in a bit after that. And then you had cryptocurrencies, typified, I'm saying Bitcoin, but cryptocurrencies around there. And those three things suddenly meant that you didn't have to go into a store, so you didn't have to steal a credit card number, because remember, a credit card number has no intrinsic value. It's just a 16-digit number with an expiry date and pussy a CVV. It has no intrinsic value. You have to go and use that to buy something, some goods and some services, then resell those to somebody else, then sell those goods on, and then you can basically fence that and then get the money back in your hands. And this meant it was very, very risky for people to do credit card theft. So credit card crime was actually quite risky back then, and it still kind of is, if you want to do that particular business model. But when you've got the commercialization of crime where you can break it up, so you can do the bits that are easy, the bits that actually get you a lot of money, and not do the risky bits because you don't want to do those and let some other lower down criminal who's coming up through the ranks take those things. But really, those three technologies suddenly enabled people to have anonymous websites. It meant that stealing credit cards wasn't as profitable as it was before, and it meant that actually you could now take payments anonymously. So you could host stuff anonymously, you could take payments anonymously, you didn't have to worry. So this whole sort of change started to occur, and of course it then led to the commercialization of crimeware, which is absolutely superb if you're a criminal. Because that then changes it to say that you had sort of the amateurs, then the IT knowledge. If around 2000 to 2010, you still had to have IT knowledge to be able to do your attacks if you wanted to. But now, really, from about mid-2011, 2012 to 2013, you really don't need to anymore. All you need to have is the motivation and the will to commit crime. And you might ask, why am I wittering on about this? And why am I wittering on about this change? But the reason why I'm doing this is because we've gone from this age of mischief to this age of idealism, which I'll come on to in a minute. But we've gone through indirect and direct monetization. And of course, you want to take as many things out of those steps as possible. But what this has really meant is the entire reason to exist of the cybersecurity community was always follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. If you can demonetize a process, you can by definition de-risk the process. If you can't make any money out of the process, there's no point in doing it. Therefore, you can stop criminals from going anywhere near it. Now, that whole thing was destroyed at the end of this year with things like NotPetya, WannaCry, etc., 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 where in reality, was money the end goal of those bits of malware? I don't know. Was it nation state? I don't know. And I'm not going to go any further on this line. But what it then meant was we then moved on to this age of idealism, where we started off with no monetization and people in reality were doing it for fun and giggles and just to get abstraction of electricity, etc., 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 straight on to actually this whole new path we've now got, which is this age of idealism, which is geopolitical power as currency. Why is it important that we understand this? If you're trying to prevent, if your entire model, your cybersecurity defense model is about preventing attacks or trying to reduce the impact of attacks, and you've got it set up on a follow the money, remove the risk, which is a lot of people have put it into, suddenly, if you've got an attacker motivated by idealism, that whole model falls apart because they don't care about getting rich. You can remove the money. What they want to do is they want to implement the political change. So with that being said, what is the purpose of the CISO, the head of information security? Now, I stole this picture from TechTarget. Apologies to TechTarget. I thought it was a really, really good picture. And it really, really explains what the modern head of information security needs to be able to do. That it's not this protection racket. It's not this person who just comes in and just tries to tell people and scare people. That actual fact, the modern information security leader is a business leader and has to have multiple facets and multiple ways and multiple things they need to be able to do. But before we get into that, let's just talk about modern CISOing. Because modern CISOing, and I hate it when people make a verb of a noun, I love it when I put it in here. Modern CISOing is tough. It's really, really tough. But you wouldn't think that if you looked on Twitter. I like Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot. In modern Twitter, you'd think, if you listen to some people, you discover the issue, you tell ops to fix the issue, operations fix the issue, it's all done. Isn't CISOing easy? I don't have any technical legacy debt. No, everyone does what they're told to do. I don't have to do any enforcement. It's all good. Well, in the real world, it's kind of a bit different. In the real world, you sort of tell operations, you find out the solution's unsupported, you ask for money, you buy lots of coffee, you find out that ops didn't actually really fix the issue, you then go back to telling operations, you find out that what you actually wanted to fix is actually unsupported, and lather, rinse and repeat, and you never really truly get to the end. But I'm going to come a bit more onto this when I talk about self-destructive industries. But this is a problem that I see in the modern information security world, is you see an awful lot of armchair security generals. And this whole thing, and I was having this conversation with someone about armchair generals on Twitter. And by the way, if anyone says they've not been an armchair general on Twitter, give me your Twitter handle. I will hunt back through your tweets and I will find an example of when you have been. Because if anyone wants to, you can hunt back through my tweets and you can find a time when I was an armchair general on Twitter. I can give you some hints, probably around the Sony breach. I was probably armchair generally quite spectacularly then. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I have learned. But around when I was talking about this to people, I was having a good old chat about not being an armchair general. And suddenly we started to write down what we then called 4 hard truths and a revelation. And I started to think about what actually the modern information security professional, what the modern head of information security, what a modern corporate leader needs to actually think about. So starting off, I started to think about a model. And the model focused on 4 things. It focused on competencies, attitudes, environment, and transformation. So let's look at this from the perspective of the modern CISO. It kind of fits together in this model like this. You've got the environment and you've got transformative elements that are going on all the time. And at the core of that, you've got your attitude and you've got your competencies. So I'm going to dig into this model, if I may, but remember that picture because we're coming back to that picture. So if we think about the link to IT, it's very fashionable for some people to say, I'm a head of information security and I'm not part of IT, almost denigrating IT as though IT are these lower beings, that they have evolved onwards, like those beings in Star Trek, the Next Generation, that suddenly became energistic beings. They've evolved into this other thing that isn't actually a technologist. Well, I've got a bit of a thing here. I do not believe that you can do a good information security job unless you, well, I say divorce. Divorce means you were married. You can't get divorced from someone you weren't married to. And I don't really mean divorce, I mean trial separation. Still in the same house, not sleeping in the same bed, keeping together for the sake of the kids, kind of thing. I'm not in that scenario, by the way. That's the kind of level I'm looking at, because I do not believe that you can do a good job in information security unless you've worked in IT. I don't believe it's absolutely possible. And to give you a good example of this, I was chatting to someone who had never worked in IT, had been in the military, and had come straight into information security. And they were having a big go at me, saying, but why won't you just follow my policies? And I went, well, have you ever been the subject of having to follow those policies? Well, no, I just write them. Now, on this line, for example, I once a year will go and spend time on our service desk taking calls. That means that if you are in Canon and you make a service desk call saying, I've forgotten my password or I don't know how to log on to that, there's a 1 in 3 chance if you call the English bit of the service desk, depending on the bit of the day, you'll get through to me. And then you'll get low customer support scores because you won't like what I have to say to you, but you'll get through to me. And I do that to kind of keep myself linked in. And this links to this whole piece of what I believe is the old style CISO, which is the focus on technology, to the new style CISO, which is the focus on ideas. So if you think about the old style CISO, which has been thought of IT, and by the way, I do appreciate the dichotomy here in that I just said I don't believe in this, but I'm presenting it, because I think it's so important you understand the difference between the CISO under IT and the CISO is not under IT. The CISO is focusing in on the opportunities. I believe, though, you've got to have the background before you can make that evolution to the new style CISO. The CISO thinks about possibilities, outcomes, profit focus, not risk, profit focus. And it's so critical that you move across to this, because then when you need to give those hard truths to the business, you need to tell those business people, I'm really sorry, but I think this is a phenomenally bad idea. You're not saying don't, you're saying I think this is a bad idea. They start to listen to you, and more on that later on. So then we come about risk-taking, which really, really, really annoys me when you get people who sit on the fence, who forget that InfoSec is part of the business. And I believe that you should be able to advise the business. I hear some information security people who say, you have option A, you have option B. I will explain them dispassionately to you, but it is you, business person, it is your decision to make the decision as to whether we go for option A and option B. I think that's total and utter rubbish. As an information security person, as an officer of the company, it is for you to explain dispassionately option A and option B. And then turn around and say, but my opinion is option A for these reasons. It is for you to explain what your position on risk is. Because if you give advice, it starts to breed trust. Because you're walking in their shoes, you're being part of it. And walking in people's shoes is something I come on to in a little bit more, a little bit later. Sorry. Now, I do apologize for whoever I stole this slide from. I think I stole this conception, from Alex Stamos. I don't think he's in the room, is he? No, I think I stole it from him. I'm not entirely sure. I've looked back through some presentation. I can't find it. But this, to me, shows the problem about the way that we as information security people manage and understand risk. If you take the perception of risk versus the actual risk, take NotPetya. NotPetya, bit of malware, potentially written by the Russian government, maybe, I don't know, hit an awful lot of companies, caused an awful lot of problems. Was it an advanced persistent threat? It was persistent. Was it advanced? Well, it used a bit of NSA malware that had been patched several months before, so I'm going to go no, it wasn't an advanced persistent threat. But in reality, if you look at that diagram, which one of those ends of the triangle would actually have solved you better on NotPetya? Getting patching and local admin passwords right, and getting things like the Microsoft tool, which I've just forgotten, begins with an L, in place. Laps in place, thank you. Or would have installing an APT solution have worked better? Well, actually, if you spin that triangle around, you can actually have where you actually really should spend your money is on things like getting patching right, not on your APT solutions. And too many information security teams listen to the hype and listen to the vendor hype and go after the James Bond fantasy and try and deploy the solution to stop the Russians or the Chinese, when the Russians or the Chinese are not actually their threat adversaries. The lowest end bottom feeding people who actually are depending upon the fact you haven't deployed Java patches, you haven't deployed Adobe patches, you don't have standard patching in place, you've got your password, your admin password is shared across your entire estate. And those are the things that unfortunately none of the vendors really focusing, because that's the unsexy end of IT. So one of my lessons here is if you can spin that triangle around and start to focus on the area that's actually of maximum benefit to your business, you're going to do really, really well. I want to focus also a little bit about the self-destructive industry, which I talked about Twitter generaling earlier on. And this is kind of links into some of the things that Jess was saying, but we have a culture of negativity. And in fact, I love one of the statements that you made about this negative culture. And I wonder, but the users are always stupid, whether that actually comes out in some of the red teaming exercises that you see, where the red teams go, the blue team's always stupid. But in actual fact, I was watching a film a long time ago, and I watched it again recently. Everyone remembers this, the 1997 film Hackers. And in that film, the guys on the left are the cool guys, and the guy on the other side is the bad guy. Quick show of hands here. Who here would say that they're currently employed in a position in InfoSec which is on the left? And who on the right? Yes, exactamundo. We're all actually on that other side. And so why is it that we have an industry that idolizes the kids on the left, although the kids on the left were the good guys, let's not forget that, but idolizes the hacker, idolizes the red team, and forgets the fact, our businesses are paying us to be the boring blue team and protect our particular company. And so if we bear in mind that this self-destructive industry is really, really, really bad and try and actually say, I will not take part in it, I think we're going to make the world a better place. So let's jump through about paying for InfoSec. This is one of my big revelations. And it's about selling on fear. Sorry. It's about changing this perception of selling on fear, not merit. I really, 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 really hate fear sales. Fear sales to me smack of an immature industry. Smacks of snake oil salesmen. And a long, long time ago, I was sitting there around a table and we were talking about deploying our own products in our own network. And I said, well, hang on a second, I'm the department of no, I can't allow these products to come in. These things aren't actually secure. You're going to have to make them more secure. And one of the salespeople sat opposite and said, oh, that's really good. Are you going to help? And I went, yeah, I'm going to help. And then from that led to, come on, well, thank you. I'm not going to go through all of this lot, it's sales stuff. We started actually helping. The information security team, this is all the stuff that we've generated internally just in the last 6 months. That's what my InfoSec team puts together. When you get a brochure, when you get a pen test on a product that's one of ours, my information security team is in. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm not telling you this, I'm saying our products are great. What I'm saying this about is if you're in an information security team and you are bored and don't know what your next step is, why not get involved in this side? Because suddenly, when you're talking to users about security issues, if you've stood in front of their customers, if you've talked and walked in their shoes, suddenly you're an awful lot more credible. When you go to a business person and say, hey, I think this needs to change, or better than that, they'll come to you and say, yeah, Quentyn, just off the record, I think we've got a problem with this. And why are they trusting you? They're trusting you because they know that you live their P&L every day with them, that they can talk to you about not just information security issues. As the old Yellow Pages advert used to say, you're not just there for the bad things in life, you're there for the good things in life as well. So how does this then approach back to this model here? Well, I suddenly realized that over time, we developed this model subconsciously. And this model is about attitude and competency that you control. I have control over the attitude I have to my users. I have control over the attitude I have to my business. I have control over my competencies. I have a choice as to how much I read. I have a choice as to how much I try and develop myself, how much I try and develop my people. The environment and the transformational aspect, now they control me. But what does this really mean for the modern CISO? I believe you've got these two ends and the evolution. You've got the hard skills and the hard and the soft skills. And the hard skills are what I started off at. I was a technologist. If you heard of my bio at the beginning, I'm very proud of having some tech skills, although I realize talking to my people now, I don't have tech skills. I've got old tech skills that no one cares about anymore. But I really, really focused on my tech skills because that's who I was. I was the department of no. I used to love writing policy. I still love writing policy. But now, the modern CISO now needs to turn into a completely different attitude. And you've seen one or two of them standing right up here. You saw Mr. Montalbano standing right here. That's a perfect example of someone on the modern CISO side. Someone who's into the influencing, into the marketing and comms. The modern CISO is going to have to be a communications and marketing master. And this is the change on the robotic side. So let's look at those 4 phases. We had that mischief to idealism via indirect monetization. We started off on a technology focus. And I talked about that old style CISO with the 2 talking heads. You're a cost center if you're on that side. If you move on to the other side, you start to become a value center. You start to focus not on the technology, but on the people and what the people can do. And where does this play out to? Well, we remembered this change. We want to move ourselves from being thought of as a cost center to being thought of as a value provider. If you're out there every single day with your business, with your people, talking to your business and talking to your people and walking in their shoes and being that trusted business leader, playing less of the enforcer role, less of a hacker role, more of a salesperson role, you're taking that hard skill shell, a base skeleton that you've got to have, remember the tech target picture? And you're putting a skin on it, a soft skin on it, and actually becoming an awful lot more human. So if you think about what we had to be yesterday, because we are a very young industry, one of the youngest industries, and what we need to be today and tomorrow. And if I can give you some final thoughts. You've got to equip yourself to be part of that solution. And one of the ways of equipping yourself to be part of that solution is take all the responsibility you practically can in your company. If there's a word where InfoSec, if you can help in an InfoSec way in your company, it's not someone else's responsibility. It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's all of our responsibility. If you take the responsibility, then you'll start to get the trust. Someone asked me the other day, they said, Quentyn, how did you get responsibility for this, this, and this? And I said, I assumed it. I just told everyone I was, everyone assumed I was, there was no one else better for it, bang, I now suddenly have a budget code. It's amazing. That's the way the modern world works. Seriously, that's a true story. Lastly, review your job description. If your job description is focused in on what you need it to be and not what you need to be today, you're going to have a problem. I mean, coach your stakeholders to rethink your role. Talk to them about how you need to be more of a business leader and less of a technologist as a head of information security, and then get your job description and change it. Put words in there like reading Twitter is part of my job. Call that threat intelligence, but call it reading Twitter is part of my job. Attending conferences is part of my job. Doing all of these soft skill things is part of my job. Going out with salespeople and spending their expense account is part of my job. It's fun. But also, if you don't start sticking it in where it matters, you won't get paid for it. And you want to get paid for it. It's good. And the last one on this is try and engage in that world you want to see. There's no good screaming about how bad the world is, how big the skills gap is, when you yourself are not willing to actually resolve that. I've got 4 jobs available, by the way, so if anyone's looking for a role, either in London or in Amsterdam, I have jobs from junior to manager level. Please grab me afterwards. And I'm on Twitter. A DM is probably the best way, or just hunt me down on email. Everyone, any questions? I'm hoping that was interesting and exciting, and actually we've covered every single aspect of it, and I'm not standing between you and some coffee. And that's why you're not hoping to run away. Anyway, thank you, really appreciate it.